15 years ago, my marriage ended in a storm of betrayal. My then-husband, Alan, had an affair with a childhood friend, Grace. The pain of it all nearly drove me to quit my job. It was during this dark time that David, my current husband, entered my life. He was my rock, my solace, and together we built a life filled with love and peace. However, tranquility is a fragile thing. Recently, my peaceful existence was shattered when I encountered Alan for the first time in 15 years. He was at a wedding we both attended, a smug smile plastered on his face. "You must still be single, right? Who'd marry a barren woman like you?" His words, laced with cruelty, cut deep. He puffed up his chest, eager to boast about his son with Grace. "Oh, really? What a cute child," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor running through me. "Speaking of which, let me introduce you to my children." The blood drained from Alan's face as my son Henry stepped forward. "I am Florence, a woman who found happiness after weathering the storms of betrayal. My life now is full of joy and chaos, overflowing with the love of my 13-year-old son Henry, my 11-year-old daughter Victoria, and my wonderful husband David." Henry, in the throes of teenage rebellion, can be a handful, but David knows just how to handle him. Victoria, a budding fashionista, knows how to wrap her brother around her little finger. "If you're not nice to Mom, I'll start disliking you, big brother," she'd threaten playfully, and Henry would immediately cave. Sorry. Look, I'll be nice to Mom, okay?" He's a good boy at heart, a charmer who brings laughter to our home. But beneath this happy facade lies a past marked by pain. My first marriage to Alan crumbled under the weight of his infidelity. We met at university, where he was my senior. Our relationship was blessed by friends and family, and we both dreamed of a future filled with children. "I want a child soon," I'd say, and he'd reply, "It would be nice to have matching outfits when we have kids." We were both so excited to start a family. However, a year passed, then another, and still no baby came. Each month, the arrival of my period brought a fresh wave of disappointment and tension. We went through countless tests and treatments, but the doctors found nothing wrong. Initially, Alan was supportive, but as time went on, his patience wore thin. "Oh, when will I ever become a father?" he'd say, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He started blaming me, implying that I was the reason we couldn't conceive. He stopped helping around the house, leaving all the chores to me. "Why did you suddenly stop helping with the housework? You used to do it before," I asked him one day. "Because you're infertile," he spat. "If you don't do the housework, you're not fulfilling your role as a woman, making our marriage pointless." His words became increasingly cruel. "My sister and her husband are already expecting their second child, isn't that great? They're on their second, and we haven't even had our first yet." He glared at me, his eyes filled with scorn. "If you had a normal body, I would have been a father long ago." "How can you say I'm not normal when we don't even know the cause?" I cried. "It's always the woman's fault for infertility, don't you know that?" he retorted. "If I had known you were infertile, I would have never married you. You should feel a bit guilty." His words pierced my heart like shards of glass. The pressure from my in-laws added to my misery. "We can't wait to see a grandchild," they'd say, their voices filled with expectation. When I tried to explain that it had only been a year, their attitude turned accusatory. "You're useless for not being able to bear children," my mother-in-law once said. "Your sister-in-law did it so quickly. You're the only defective one." The weight of their words pressed down on me, suffocating me. One evening, my best friend Charlotte invited me out for drinks. Alan was rarely home, always claiming to work late. I had a nagging suspicion, but I pushed it aside. That night, Charlotte dropped a bombshell. "I've been wanting to see you for so long. I have something important to talk to you about, Florence." "I've missed you too. So, what's on your mind, Charlotte?" "Do you remember Grace?" Leah was Alan's childhood friend. They lived near each other when they were young, and their parents were close. Grace attended the same university as us, and now works at the same company as me. She's the daughter of our CEO and got her job through family connections. We weren't close in college, and even at work we hardly interacted. But, well, it's hard to say, but I think your husband and Grace are having an affair. I was stunned. "I saw them recently," Charlotte continued, her voice low. "They were walking hand in hand. Not just like friends. No way. I think you should check it out." If you need to talk, just call me, okay? Thank you for telling me. Alan's late nights and his weekend trips for client entertainment, it all clicked into place. That very night, I went to a detective agency. Within a week, they had the evidence. But I wasn't ready to file for divorce. As awful as he was, Alan was the man I had vowed to spend my life with. I couldn't bring myself to end it. A few days later, Alan came home early. He was sitting at the dinner table, an unusual sight. "Oh, you're home?" I said, trying to sound casual. "I thought you'd be late again today." "Yeah, sorry about that," he replied, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "I need to talk to you." My heart pounded in my chest. I knew what was coming. "I want a divorce." "What?" "Grace is pregnant. I'm going to marry her." "Grace? Your childhood friend? You said she was just a friend and now she's pregnant? You were having an affair." "Don't call it an affair," he snapped. "Makes me sound like a jerk. Can't help it, right? Grace can get pregnant. She's beautiful, and there's no reason for me to choose you over her." His shamelessness took my breath away. He didn't even have the decency to feel guilty. "My mom has been nagging me to divorce you," he continued, smirking. "She says Grace is prettier, kinder, and can bear children. She always liked her better. This will make her happy." Tears welled up in my eyes. I knew his family had always preferred Grace. "Well, I've packed my stuff. Gotta get back to Grace and her upcoming baby." With that, he walked out, leaving me numb with shock and grief. A few days later, a one-sided divorce paper arrived. Tucked inside was a note written in a woman's handwriting. "Please divorce my husband soon." I stared at the note, a wave of anger washing over me. "It was you who took my husband away." I wanted to scream. I refused to be blamed for this. I took the evidence from the detective agency and filed for divorce mediation. A few days later, my phone rang. The voice on the other end was shrill, filled with rage. "What do you think you're doing? Why did you start a lawsuit?" It was Grace. "Well, it's only natural, isn't it? I know all about your inappropriate behavior. It's only right that I demand compensation." "Compensation? I'm pregnant. How can you be so cruel at a time when I need money for the baby?" "Who's being cruel here? You're the one who got involved with a married man. You're the infertile one, you horrible woman." Her words stung, but I refused to back down. "Anyway, I plan to discuss the divorce, including compensation, in an official setting. Let's talk about it then." I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. During the mediation, the evidence of Alan and Grace's affair was undeniable. Alan tried to use my supposed infertility against me, but the court dismissed his claims. There was no conclusive evidence that I was infertile, especially after only a year of marriage. I received a lump sum payment of $220,000 in alimony from Alan and $110,000 from Grace. I didn't want any further financial ties to them, and with that, our divorce was finalized. But the ordeal didn't end there. The affair became a hot topic among our university friends. Rumors spread that I had hidden my infertility from Alan. Some even sympathized with him and Grace. At work, things were even worse. Grace, the CEO's daughter, played the victim. "Florence is such a horrible person, demanding alimony when I'm about to have a baby," she sobbed to anyone who would listen. "She even hid her infertility." My bosses, afraid of offending Grace, turned against me. No matter how hard I worked, I was sidelined, my projects taken away. Eventually, I was pushed to the point of resigning, but as one door closed, another opened. I was headhunted by another company. "We need someone as diligent and capable as you," they said. This new company was a breath of fresh air. My boss treated me with respect, and there was no trace of favoritism or nepotism. I found myself drawn to this wonderful man, and as fate would have it, he became my husband. David was my pillar of strength during those dark days after my separation from Alan. Over dinners, we shared our stories, our dreams, and our fears. Our connection deepened, and soon our relationship blossomed into love. When David proposed, I was overjoyed, but the shadow of my past lingered. I confessed my fear of infertility. David looked at me with such love and sincerity in his eyes. "Of course, I'd be happy if we have children in the future," he said. "But the most important thing is that I love you, Florence. You mean everything to me. So even if we can't have children, I'll always be by your side." He pulled me into a warm embrace, and I knew I had found my soulmate. Shortly after our marriage, we welcomed our son Henry into the world, and a few years later, our daughter Victoria was born. Perhaps my inability to conceive with Alan was a matter of timing or compatibility. Whatever the reason, I was blessed with 2 beautiful children with David. Parenting is challenging, but we are incredibly happy. Then came that fateful day at the wedding. The wedding was in full swing, with guests mingling and exchanging greetings. I excused myself to use the restroom, and that's when I saw him. Alan. My breath caught in my throat. What is he doing here? Then I remembered. The bride and groom were our university friends. It was inevitable that he'd be here. I tried to slip past unnoticed, but his voice boomed across the room. Hey! He had spotted me. Well, look who it is. Haven't seen you in a while. You've gained weight, ha ha ha. Alan, clearly intoxicated, was loud and obnoxious. You haven't changed a bit, I thought, still as sarcastic as ever. He called his family over. Grace, as beautiful as ever, joined him, their son trailing behind. Oh my, long time no see, Grace said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. Have you put on weight? Stress eating, maybe? Ha 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 ha. We've been through a lot, ha ha ha. You're still infertile, right? No one would want you now, ha 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 ha. Their cruel laughter stung, leaving me speechless. I noticed their son, a handsome boy, looking down, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment. He seemed uncomfortable with his parents' behavior and their need to belittle me. He must be a kind child, I thought. Just as I was about to leave, Alan grabbed my arm. You divorced me because of infertility, and yet you still had the gall to take money from us? He was still holding a grudge after all these years. If anyone should hold a grudge, it's me, I retorted. Grace chimed in. Yeah, you're infertile and single. Why do you need money? Families like us with children need more. Give us back double the money you took. Their selfishness was astounding. Just then, their son spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. Single means unmarried, right? But she's wearing a wedding ring on her left hand. Alan and Grace stared at my left hand, their faces contorted in disbelief. You're married! They shrieked in unison. I felt a blush creep up my neck as the other guests turned to stare. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the tension. Auntie and Uncle, you shouldn't be so loud at a celebration like this. It's bothering other people. Maybe you should be more considerate. It was Henry. Victoria, worried about my prolonged absence, had followed him. She always spoke her mind, but it was rare for Henry to be so assertive. Mommy, you're late, Victoria said, her voice laced with concern. Mom, you have kids? Yes, I do, I replied, my voice trembling slightly. Let me introduce them. This is my son, Henry, and my daughter, Victoria. Alan was stunned. Grace stared at Henry, her eyes wide with disbelief. Then, in a hushed, horrified tone, they started questioning Henry's attire. Yes, he came straight from school with my husband, so he's still in his uniform, I explained. Not that... I mean that uniform. It's from that famous private middle school. Oh yes. Henry worked hard and wanted to try for it, so we let him take the exam. He passed and has been attending that private middle school since this year. Henry excelled in his studies and was attending a prestigious school in the area. No way, that can't be your son, of all people, Grace exclaimed. My daughter too. Next year she plans to take the same school's exam, I added. Yeah, and you know Henry is amazing. He won a violin contest. Violin? I thought I recognized this boy. He was on TV recently. You saw that? Yes, he's been getting quite a bit of media attention lately. He was coming back from violin practice today. Grace and Alan were speechless, their faces a mixture of shock and envy. You were supposed to be infertile. How could you have children like this? Alan sputtered. You both seem happy, and that's great. As you can see, I'm filled with happiness too. Please, let's not involve each other anymore. We have no relation to each other now. I turned to leave, my children flanking me protectively. Just then, David arrived. Hey, what's going on? The main event is about to restart. Alan's face paled. Mr. Lopez, the president. Grace also turned pale, recognizing my husband. Is your husband by any chance the young Mr. Lopez who became the president last year? David, My husband was the president of the parent company of Grace's father's firm. During my job search, I had been approached by the parent company and made the switch. It was there that I met David, who was already a rising star in the company. Last year, he was appointed president, recommended by the previous president. "Ah, I'm Lopez. What's with this atmosphere? What happened?" David asked, sensing the tension. Henry spoke up. "I heard these people calling Mom infertile and fat, so Victoria and I came to help her out." "You heard that, huh?" David's expression hardened. "I heard rumors, but I didn't expect such a lack of decency." Alan started making excuses. "No, I mean, Mr. Lopez, the president. There's no way I would speak ill of the wife of President Lopez, right? Grace, why are you grinning at this woman's husband?" Alan hissed. "I was the one who suffered because of her, getting in trouble with my father for having my money taken. I'll never forgive her." "Grace, think before you speak," Alan snapped. "If he dislikes us, our subcontracting company is finished." As Alan groveled and Grace protested, their argument escalated, drawing stares from the surrounding guests. Their son, who had been silent until now, cried out, "Let's stop this already. I've been listening and it's terrible how Mom and Dad are talking about this lady. Calling her fat, infertile, and ridiculing her, and then demanding money back. It's embarrassing for me. And what's this about an affair? Am I a child born from an affair? Am I an unwanted child?" Alan and Grace were visibly shaken by their son's tearful outburst. "Oh, well, it's not like that," Grace stammered. I noticed the other guests staring at us, their faces a mixture of amusement and disapproval. Grace, finally realizing the spectacle they were making, blushed deeply and looked down. Although I couldn't forgive Alan and Grace, I admired their son's strong sense of justice and kindness. He had nothing to do with this. I wanted to comfort him, but before I could speak, David stepped forward. "Thank you for defending my wife from the insults. You are a kind child," David said, patting the boy's head. Then turning to me, he added with a smile, "But maybe I am a bit chubby." "That's not true at all," I protested. "Well, actually, I am pregnant. My belly has been growing." I stroked my belly gently. I was, in fact, pregnant with our third child. I looked at the boy. His eyes filled with tears, and said, "Your mom also nurtured you in her belly with great care. You're not an unwanted child. Your mom and dad love you and are proud of you, right?" I looked at Alan and Grace, silently urging them to reassure their son. The boy looked at his parents, his eyes pleading. "Really?" Alan and Grace, flustered, quickly nodded. Yes, you're our pride. Yeah, you're very important to us." The boy's face lit up with a smile. Seeing him happy brought a sense of relief. "Let's get back to our seats for now. It's a day of celebration," I said, ushering everyone back to their tables. The wedding continued, and as we were leaving for the station, Grace and Alan approached us, their son holding their hands. Henry and Victoria stood protectively beside me, but David chuckled and calmed them down. "Sorry about that," Alan mumbled. "We're truly sorry. It's late, but we regret everything, including today. And thank you for earlier." It was the first apology I had received from them in 15 years. Perhaps having a child had changed them, at least a little. "Really? After all this time?" I laughed. "Well then." With that, I turned and walked away, my family by my side. Henry offered to carry my bags, taking the one with the maternity mark on it. Victoria cheerfully draped a coat over my shoulders. Despite their young age, they were thoughtful and caring, especially during my pregnancy. "All right, tonight's dinner will be Dad's homemade hamburgers, Henry and Victoria's favorite," I announced. "Yay! Thank you!" they cheered. As we walked away from the drama, I vowed to protect the smiles of my beloved family, leaving the pain of the past behind me. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.